The purpose of this video is to demonstrate proper techniques for harvesting asparagus in Michigan. Michigan asparagus is snapped just above the surface of the ground, which allows for very efficient two-handed harvesting. On average, 25 to 45 trips are made over the field each season, and it's common for a worker to harvest the same row each time over the field. Workers ride over the field on carts, which hold 3 to 7 persons. It's very important that each worker show up on time each day that asparagus is picked, so others riding on the cart don't have to wait. Asparagus stalks are referred to as spears. One must start the season snapping the spears close to the ground, so sharp, tough stubble does not build up and interfere with later harvests. This is the most important thing to consider when starting the harvest season, and we'll talk about this again later. The weather in Michigan during the spring season can change rapidly. The temperature at daylight may be 36 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, but may climb to 75 degrees or warmer by mid-afternoon. Workers must come to the field prepared for variable working conditions. Adding or removing layers of clothing helps keep workers comfortable. Rubber gloves may be worn over cotton or jersey gloves to protect the hands. Sunny skies may turn to rain in a few hours. In the event that thunder and/or lightning are observed, workers should leave the field immediately. Asparagus carts should be shut off and left in the field. Workers should either sit inside their vehicles with all doors and windows closed or return to their housing until the storm passes. Harvest aids called asparagus carts or picking carts are used to move workers over the field. Before the cart is started, each worker needs to sit on their seat and adjust the foot supports. Workers need to keep their feet on the supports at all times while the cart is moving and never allow one's foot to drag the soil surface. The person in the center of the cart steers with their feet and controls the speed of the cart while harvesting. This person is responsible for the safety of the other members of the crew and will make sure that all crew members are seated or completely clear of the cart before moving or turning. All crew members need to be extremely cautious that gasoline, oil, or grease does not get on their gloves while being around the cart. If gloves happen to become soiled, they must be disposed of immediately. Grease or oil cannot be washed off asparagus, and if contaminated, the entire load may be rejected. Lugs will be stacked on the cart, and asparagus will be placed in the lugs while traveling down the rows. Care must be taken to not allow the lug to scrape against the cart wheels. Soil from the wheels can be transferred to the lug if they are touching. Lugs should be free of debris or trash before placing on the cart. Lugs must never be placed on the ground while loading or unloading. Food, gum, glass containers, and trash are not allowed on the cart and should never be taken into the field. Bottled water is allowed to be used while harvesting, but care must be taken that open or unopened containers not be placed in picking lugs and should always be removed from the field. Use of tobacco products are not allowed while sitting on the cart or while in the field. Children, relatives, or friends are not allowed to ride on the cart at any time and should not be present in the field. Always drink enough water to maintain hydration and regularly use the restroom. Remember to dispose of toilet paper in the toilet. For your safety and the safety of the food you will handle, always wash your hands before and after you go to the bathroom and before and after eating. Report any illness you may have to the farm owner or supervisor. It's your responsibility to report any food contamination that you may see. Michigan asparagus farmers may produce asparagus for 3 different markets. Each market requires that the asparagus spears are snapped at slightly different lengths. Some work crews may harvest for the same market the entire season, but others may be required to switch a few times during the season. The farm owner or boss will demonstrate to the workers how they would like to have the asparagus snapped for each market. Rulers or dowels are sometimes taped to the cart to remind workers of the correct spear length. There are a few basic principles that apply to harvesting asparagus for all 3 markets. The most important thing about harvesting asparagus is that the spear be snapped off close to the surface of the ground. Snapping close to the ground benefits both the farm owner and the workers harvesting the crop. Asparagus spears are heaviest at the butt end. When a spear is snapped just above the ground, it will weigh the most. If a spear is snapped a few inches above the ground, it will weigh less. If all spears are snapped close to the ground, the farm owner will get high yields. Workers being paid on piece rate will harvest more pounds and will earn more per day. If the field is not snapped close to the ground the first few trips over it, it's impossible to snap close to the ground in later trips. Butt ends that are left in the field dry out, get hard, and sometimes have sharp edges. It can hurt your hand to continually contact the old butts, so workers tend to leave each harvest thereafter higher than the last. Leaving tall butts, sometimes called stubble, also leads to poor spear quality. If a 9-inch spear is required for the fresh market and 3 inches of stubble are present, then a spear needs to reach 12 inches before it can be harvested. Tips of asparagus spears begin to open when the spear reaches 8 to 10 inches. If the tip becomes too open, it will be rejected, lowering packouts and paid weights. Every spear that emerges from the ground should be snapped off, but not every spear should be placed in the lug. Spears that are either too thin or those that have been damaged are called culls and should be snapped off and dropped on the ground. This is called cleaning the field and should be done on every trip over the field. Cull spears are most easily snapped off when they are small. The farm owner or boss will show the workers which spears are too small to be placed in the lug. The farm owner or boss will explain to you what size spears you should harvest. This could change a few times during the season if the farm needs to change from one market to another. If you're not sure about the spear length to be left in the field, please ask the owner to check back with you after you've made a trip over the field. The 3 markets that you may harvest for are processed cuts, processed whole spears, and fresh. Harvesting for processed whole spears and fresh are very similar. The length of the spear and how they're placed in the lug are slightly different. Harvesting for the fresh market requires the longest spears. For both processed whole spears and fresh, care must be taken when placing the spears in the lug. The farm owner or boss will demonstrate how they want the spears placed in the lugs. 2 things should be remembered when picking spears or fresh. Care should be taken to not allow the tips of the spears to hang outside the lug. These tips will get smashed, and as a result, they will be rejected. Also, lugs that are too full will not nest properly, causing whole pallets to tip over. Asparagus in the lugs that are overfilled will be smashed, causing rejection. Care must be taken that picking carts are not overloaded with full lugs of asparagus. If carts are overloaded with too many full lugs, the cart axles could break. Repairing a broken axle is expensive and time-consuming and will likely result in lost time and wages. Never allow more than 1 full pallet or 30 to 35 lugs on a picking cart at any time. Harvesting for processing cuts is different than the whole spear or fresh in a couple of ways. Spears are placed into lugs in the field, but then the asparagus is tipped over into large containers placed on the field edge. It's not important that the spears be kept pointing in the same direction. Spears are snapped shorter for processed cuts because spears longer than 7.5 to 8 inches are trimmed to that length when graded, and the over length is deducted from the weight of the box. This is called grading asparagus and may affect how much you are paid. If too many spears measure over 8 inches, the whole load may be rejected. Sometimes when spears are snapped for harvest, they will break off under the ground, resulting in a white butt. White butt is a problem in all markets, but is especially bad in processed cuts because these spears are not trimmed in the plant. When white butts make it into the processed pack, it may not be sold. Extra care must be taken that white butts are not present in processed cuts. Double snapping is a method of trimming spears to the proper length or removing white butts in the field. Usually, a small handful of spears are held in one hand and the other hand is used to snap them off to the proper length. You should be observant of pests while in the field and report anything unusual to the farm owner. Asparagus beetle adults lay their eggs on the spears and can cause a load to be rejected. Cutworms eat the tips of small spears, causing them to twist over. Starting the harvest season off with proper techniques makes your job easier and more productive. You'll likely sit on the same spot on the cart and harvest the same row 30 or more times over the harvest season. If stubble is left too long on the first couple of harvests, it will be there through the entire season. Workers with good habits tend to earn more money over the course of the season.